All right, what's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast weekly real estate tip. And today I want to do a deep dive breakdown with you on why I believe what we are heading into is going to be worse than what we saw during the great financial crisis when it comes to the housing market itself. Now, those of you that may not have awareness, the great financial crisis, so really that, 2008 through about 2012 kind of era was the worst housing market crash that we've seen on a national scale here in the United States in recorded history. And I believe that what we are stepping into definitely could be worse than what we experienced there. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe I'm wrong, but one thing that served me extremely well my 20 plus year real estate journey that's allowed me to become one of the top producers and top team leaders on the country, allowed me to sell over 7,000 homes, and has allowed my business to grow and scale each and every single year, regardless of what's going on with the economy, is because I hope for the best, plan for the worst. I always look at, okay, like where could this go? So if I'm planning and prepping on this being worse than the great financial crisis, worse than the Great Depression, if I prep correctly, okay, my business is good to go. Now, if it doesn't happen, and maybe I'm wrong on these predictions, okay, then my business is also good to go. History favors he or she that is prepared in the best possible position. But me sharing this and having this title and talking about this with you isn't just because I'm preparing for it. It's just a hedge for my business. I'm doing that for sure. But I'm also doing it because I believe with the points I'm going to walk you through here today, that this is a definite strong possibility, high probability that this will be worse than what we experienced during the great financial crisis. And if you look at the great financial crisis, right, that really, we peaked in 2005, at least, every market's slightly different with this, but if we look at this as a whole, right, we peaked in about 2005. Then it started, slowly softening, slowly starting, just like what we've been seeing over the last couple of years. It was a slow grind, right? Then boom, things fell off a cliff. It hit that breaking point in 2008. Then we bottomed out in 2012, hit the bottom of the market in 2012. Then it took about till 2018, 2019 in most markets to go out there and get back to peak 2005 prices. So this was like a 14-year long overall correction period from peak to valley back to those '05 prices, right? And again, it was the worst housing market crash that we've seen on a national front in recorded history in the United States. And I believe that what we are seeing here is going to be as bad, if not worse. And I think the probability is very high that it's going to be worse. And again, I don't have a crystal ball. The other disclaimer I want to give before I start getting into, because I want to go in through, do a deep dive into the points that are leading me to believe this. And look, maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong, but I want to walk you through the points that I'm going to, as to why I believe this, because it's different than I know what we're seeing on kind of mainstream media or in a lot of the real estate media out there. If you look at, I don't know, Zillow or Realtor.com or Inman, right? We see all these different, points and everybody's got their different theories, with this. So I know that this is a different perspective than most are giving us out there. So I want to back this up with why I believe this is, so you can make your own conclusion. Because again, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just sitting here saying, hey guys, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm prepping. Here's what I'm planning for. You do what you will with that intel. Then from there, I want to walk you through, even more importantly, what to do, or at least what I'm doing. Right. What I've learned in this, almost 21-year long career, that again, I've seen the two biggest booms. I've seen the biggest real estate market crash to this point in recorded history. My business has continued to grow and scale every single year for my whole entire journey. And it's not because I'm somebody special. It's because I had great mentors that have been through a lot of different real estate cycles that taught me these things that served me very well, that I implemented in my business, and they work for me too. So just like my mentors shared them with me, I want to share them with you here. So hopefully they can have the same impact, that this intel and this information was able to have on me. But the thing is look, I had to implement it. I had to take it serious. I had to take action on it and implement on it for it to be able to give me that power that I wanted to give. So two quick things before I jump into this data here is, first off, this is not fear porn. I'm not doing this to scare you. I'm not doing this to try to freak you out. I want you to know and want you to understand that the real estate market itself does not dictate your success. You and you alone dictate your success. It doesn't matter if it's a buyer's market, seller's market, boom, bust, crash, anything in between. There's always massive opportunity out there. We're going to talk about this here today. There's massive opportunity right now. There's going to be massive opportunity going forward. So, the real estate, this isn't to freak you out or scare you, right? It's just to, hey, we gotta deal in realities, have awareness of what is, so then we can see the opportunities at hand. There's so many in our industry right now. They're like, oh, I just can't wait. I'm just going to ride this out and hope that things get better. Hope is not a business plan. Hope is a strategy for failure, not a strategy for success. So we got to deal in realities, see the situation, see the opportunities at hand. And if we pivot and adapt and shift accordingly to where the opportunities are at, our businesses will always grow. The other thing, if you are a real estate agent, team leader, or brokerage owner, and you have some interest in learning more about partnering with me at EXP, where you get 100% full free access to all my coaching, all my training, all my mentorship, along with my business partner, Mike Sherrard, who's the best in the world at AI, social media, building real estate businesses through YouTube. So you get 2-for-1. You get all of both of our coaching, training, mentorship, all 100% for free to help ensure that you are crushing and dominating your real estate goals along with your agents. If you are interested in learning more about what a partnership could look like, there's a link below for you to schedule a 100% confidential, 100% zero pressure. And when I say zero pressure, I'm not going to try to recruit you, not going to push you, not going to try to say, I'm just going to walk you through, hey, here's the opportunity. And to me, my belief, this is why I made the move over here. I had a lot of opportunities available to me, but I saw this as the single best opportunity and the best way to position ourselves for going forward with all the changes that we're seeing in the industry. I saw this as the best vehicle, the best platform to go out there and grow my business. So I want to just walk you through, hey, here's what this looks like. It was never explained to me properly. And then eventually it was explained to me properly. I saw the power in it. I was like, dude, I gotta take advantage of this opportunity. So I'm just gonna walk you through, hey, here's the opportunity at hand. Answer any questions that you have. If you think it's a fit for you, great. If it's not, that's okay too. We can still be friends. So there's gonna be a link below in the show notes or the description for you to book that, schedule that, if that's something that you want to do. Okay, enough on that. Let's jump into. So I'm gonna first go through some of the top reasons, and there's so many things going on right now. I mean, it would take me hours and hours and hours to cover every little thing, and there's a lot of things that I don't even have awareness of that are taking place right now. We're simultaneously seeing so many changes on a micro level, a macro level, and so many different fronts. This is probably more changes than we've ever seen anytime in any of our lifetimes, of just all these different moving parts. But I want to go through the ones that are impacting what we do. You and I, with selling real estate and helping buyers and sellers and growing real estate, teams, brokerages, whatever it is that you're building specifically to real estate. Okay, so the first thing is with new builds, the overbuilding of new builds. Now, I know if you've been watching this podcast for a long time, I've told you differently, or at least, from my knowledge base. I'm not here telling you, and I'm going to kind of reiterate this. What I said earlier is, look, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not here telling you what to think, what to believe, right? This is just what my due diligence and my research, and I do a lot of that on this because my job is to make sure that me and my agent partners are in the best possible position to go out there and succeed, looking for those opportunities at hand. So I'm able to spend, several hours a day and just research and due diligence and paying attention to this stuff. So this is just, hey, what I see, giving this information to you. You do with what you will with it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. I don't know. This is just what I'm seeing out there. So this whole narrative, though, with supply and demand, and I've been saying this for years on the podcast, but I believe it is absolute utter BS. Now, don't get me wrong. Over 2020 through 2022, there was definitely a shortage of inventory out there, but there isn't a shortage of total homes. You got 150 million single family housing units throughout the United States. And with the stats I'm going to share with you guys are specific here to the United States, even though I know that this is, not just a thing that's taking place here in the United States. This is taking place globally. And one of the differences between the great financial crisis and what we're seeing now today is the great financial crisis was a U.S. issue that spilt over to the rest of the world. When you have the number one economy, that gets in massive trouble and has a massive meltdown, it impacts the rest of the world. Now this is a global problem, right? And as bad as the situation that the U.S. is in, the U.S. is in one of the better positions than the rest of the world. So the globe is like every single country out there, for the vast majority, are in a very, very difficult, tough position right now. So these are things taking place. I was talking with a buddy of mine in New Zealand, but seeing a big crash right now in their prices. So these are things that are taking place here. But I'm going to be using very specific data just here to the United States. So we got 150 million single family housing units, and then what, roughly 350 million people, if that's accurate. I don't know how accurate that is, but when you look at this with the household formations, household makeup, there's not a lack of overall units. Now I get at that point in time, yeah, because of just the economic, what we were going down with the lockdowns and with that unique situation, it created more purchase power for buyers to jump in, and you artificially lower interest rates to that level created a lot of purchase power. 1% on interest rate, increases purchase power by like 10%. So it created all this insane purchase power, for a lot of buyers, and then you had a lot of, just relocation taking place because of what we were experiencing. And so, yeah, there was a shortage of active listings during that period of time versus the amount of buyers that we saw, but there's not an actual shortage of actual units overall when you look at population versus housing units. So new builders, our builders have now overbuilt again. We're sitting on about a year's worth of inventory for new builds. If you look at new build completed properties that have not yet been sold that are available for sale on the market, it's the highest level that we've seen since 2019. And this is why, I don't know what your market's like, but in my market in Phoenix, Arizona, it's very difficult for resale sellers to compete against new builders because, man, they're offering so many incentives. They're offering lower prices, so many incentives. They're buying down interest rates. They're buying blocks of mortgages. So it's very, very difficult to complete because, like, they're hurting, dude. They got this massive amounts of inventory. They need to offload this inventory, and when you've got, multi-billion dollar, national, new build organizations that can afford to take some of these losses, but need to get these things off their books, they can afford to do something that a regular home seller may not be able to do when it's just against their property. So first thing is, okay, new builders, massive are built. Now they're in trouble. And that's going to continue because, again, they got to continue offloading this inventory, continue creating downward stressors on the marketplace. Secondary thing is the stress itself that exists on the consumer today. So I get asked quite often, like, well, Josh, I hear you say that this could be worse than the great financial crisis, worse than the Great Depression. It not just with the housing market, but just with the overall economic, crash that we're coming into. And I'm like, look, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know for sure if it's going to be, but that's what I'm prepping and planning for. And the reason being is if you look at the consumer today, the consumer is in a way, way, way worse off position today than they were leading into the great financial crisis or leading into the Great Depression. At no point in time in recorded history, when we look at the consumer, have we seen the debt to savings gap be this wide? Like, no point in time have we seen it be this wide, accelerating at this pace and at this wide. Like, the consumer is absolutely tapped out. They're in a lot of trouble right now. And we're seeing this when it comes to defaults on auto, student loan debt, medical debt, credit card debts, now defaults on mortgage debt. If you look at, you got almost 14% of all FHA loans that are 30 plus day lates right now are in 30-day plus late status. So we're seeing, the consumer already, breaking at a very high level and has been for several years now. So when I look at the stress that the consumer's in, man, we've never seen the consumer as a whole be in this bad of a situation. So and then per Fannie Mae, and so this isn't my data, this is per Fannie Mae right now. In order to get housing down to back to like that 2016 through 2019 affordability, there's one of three things needs to happen here. Either wages on incomes need to go up 60%. So prices stay the same, interest rates stay the same, right? So you got to have wages go up 60% while no inflation, other inflation taking place in any aspect, right? So either that has to happen. Okay. So I want you to ask yourself as I go through these, okay, what do you think the probability of this is? So what do you think the probability is that wages are going to go up 60% with no other inflation created to go so we can get back to 2000, just healthy affordability, right? At least for the probability I think that taking place is almost zero. Right. Especially what we're seeing right now is, mass layoffs, things taking place, especially in white collar jobs, right. I just don't see that happening. Okay. Then mortgage rates would have to go down to 2.85%. Now, we saw mortgage rates get that low one time ever in recorded history. And why was that? Because you had the Federal Reserve stepping in, buying $90 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities, something they've never done before ever, right? And that was because, at least to their reason, their excuse, whether you think it's BS or not, it just is what it is. It was the reason that they're giving us. We're experiencing this 100-year pandemic. They believed that they needed to do it to go out there and save the economy, whatever. Right? So it's happened once in recorded history. I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but I think the probability of that taking place and taking place anytime in the near future. I mean, Jerome Powell's come out and said that, hey, we were too aggressive with it. We bought too much. We did it for too long. Shouldn't have done that. They probably learned their lesson on that. Okay, probably that taking place is about zero. Right. So then from there, according to again Fannie Mae, so either incomes need to go up 60%, rates need to come down to 2.85%, or prices need to come down on average nationally by 38% to get back to that affordability. So which one of these has the highest probability? Probably prices coming down 38%. Yeah, right. To get back to that, pre kind of catapult craziness, high inflation crap that we saw, over the last, 5, 6 years or 5 years. All right. So then from there, okay, if we look at the boomers, baby boomers and silent generation. So I said earlier that there's 150 million single family housing units held, owned in the United States. So 150 million units, 50% of those, so 75 million units, residential units, are held by boomers and the silent gen. So this is like what, 62 and older? You got about 9% that are held by the silent gen, about 41% held by boomers. So then from there, right, it's just the fact of demographics, how it works. Unfortunately, we don't all live forever. So then when we look at this, you got 70% of when somebody lives in a home, passes away, that home is, that estate is passed through family, probates, right? 70% are not kept. They're resold on the marketplace, right? And this was a research study done by Charles Schwab that found that again, 70% of family members that inherit estates from, family members that loved ones, family members that passed away, they end up selling those off. So regardless, so we got 75 million new residential housing units that are going to be entering the market here within the next couple decades, right? So again, when it comes down to this whole supply and demand thing, I just don't ever, and I haven't ever bought into it because I don't see it, which we'll talk about here in a moment with declining demographics here in the United States and globally. I just don't buy into that, right? So we're talking 50 million based on these stats that 75 or 70% of these estates that get inherited by family members end up selling them because they can't keep them, don't want to keep them, whatever that reason may be. So we got just over 50 million residential units that'll be hitting the market over the next several decades. And then about 25 million that'll probably be kept, whether family members move into them or held as rental properties, whatever. But just think of that 50 million new residential units on top of everything else hitting the marketplace over the next several decades. Because if you look at this, you got 40% of boomers and silent gen that will not be here in the next 10 years. Right. So I know it's unfortunate. It just is what it is. So we're going to see this massive listing wave hitting the marketplace, at a magnitude of size that we may never have seen before. Not that I've ever seen in my 20 plus years career, when it comes to this. What does that do to prices? What does that do when it comes to, supply and demand? Probably going to drive prices down. This is probably going to be a long-term grind out of driving prices down when it comes to that. Okay, then let's talk about unemployment. So I know we get all these different employment rates or employment job reports. You got to realize that a lot of the primary job report data that we get to us is off of W-2 payrolls. So let's just say I've got a really good job, and it's a good multiple six-figure job, or making 200 G's a year or whatever, and I get laid off from that job because what we're seeing the biggest layoffs right now is in the kind of the good jobs, right? Those the white collar jobs, those multiple six figures. That's where we're seeing the biggest amount of layoffs currently. Okay, so I lose that job. So that's one W-2 payroll, right? Then I have to go get maybe three other W-2 jobs. So I went from working 60 hours a week to now I'm working 100 hours a week. Still not making the same amount of money as I was making before, but enough to maybe get by and pay bills and just get by for now. Well, that counts as, okay, 3 new job creations, 1 job loss. Yeah, right. So we're seeing a record number of people having to hold multiple jobs because the good jobs are going away. So they're having to hold multiple jobs, but they're still not making the same amount of money. So they're not able to reinvest that money back into the economy, back into, overall GDP. But when we look at this, I was on Facebook the other day and I saw an announcement through the news locally. So if you maybe don't have these in your market, but we have them in my area here in like the Phoenix metro area. So we got these like self-driving Ubers called Waymo, right? So there's like self-driving cars, dude. They got this thing that spins around the top for all the sensors, whatever, but they're self-driving. So just think of a self-driving Uber, no drivers. And they've been around for a while out here. You know, now I just saw an announcement that Waymo is partnering with DoorDash to automate food delivery, grocery deliveries. So, okay, like your Uber drivers are going away, right? Your Door Dashers are going away, really impacting gig work. So if you look at this, yeah, I was listening to the All In podcast not too long ago. I can't remember which one of the gentlemen on the All In podcast mentioned. If you haven't watched the All In podcast, not saying to go watch it, but it's these, you know, several, four tech freaking like billionaires, right? Like all homies with Elon Musk and, really smart dudes though. And one of them had a prediction that in 2030, Amazon will have essentially zero employees, right? You got self-driving cars delivering the packages. You got robots all in the factories, packaging everything up, then bringing it to ship it, put it into the self-driving, vans, then the self-driving vans, going out there. Like, dude, there's restaurants in my market where you have servers that are robots. Yeah, right. Not like a physical robot that comes out and like you think of from the movies. Yeah, right. But you put your order in a kiosk, and then it's like a little thing on wheels that comes out and delivers you your meals. Right. So we're seeing, and when you go into, I don't know, McDonald's with the kiosk, or I don't know if you've seen this in your area, but you go into gas stations, and now you just set the things on the counter and it automatically scans them. What, like there's no cashier. Yeah, I went to, this was about a year or so ago, but I was in the airport, and it was like one, I don't know, Amazon store or something like that, right? And it kind of tricked me out in the beginning, dude, right? So I'm walking into this store, and there's these, how like when you go to a sporting event or what, not a sporting event, but like any, you've seen it before, where there's a little stand where you have to walk through it. It's got a little bar that like once you scan your thing or insert the money, it goes down so you can walk through it. So it had those, right? So to enter, I had to scan my credit card. Then it scanned my credit card, approved it, whatever. Then it lowered the bar, let me into the store. Then there's cameras everywhere. And this was like a good sized convenience store. It wasn't like a tiny little store. Good sized convenience store. So you just grab whatever you want to grab through all the sensors, through all the cameras. It somehow knows exactly what you grab and what you walk out of that store with. It automatically charges your credit card. And again, I was tripped out. I was like, dude, I feel like I was stealing, because there's not a human being there. So if we look at with all the automation, all the AI, all the technology, okay, is the job market going to get worse or better, for W-2 jobs, for employment? So I just want you to think about that. I mean, it's already, becoming a mess, with layoffs and different things taking place here. But, long term, over the next 5, 6, 10 years, like, do you think the job market's going to get stronger? Is it going to get better? Is it going to be more buyers for these homes, less buyers for these homes? Just something to consider. From everything I'm seeing, I just think it's going to be less, less, and less. Right. Then from there, we got shrinking demographics. So not just nationally, but globally. And the reason that this matters is, again, when we talk about the whole supply and demand issue, okay, you got 150 million housing units throughout the United States, right? But when we need to have here in the United States 2.2 children per couple just to match replacement rates. And we're averaging what, like 1.87? So we're far below replacement rates. So there's lesser and lesser people to go out there and buy these homes. But then when you also look at this, when you got lesser people to consume, lesser people to produce, that also brings down GDP, right? So worsens the economy, whatever, just puts a government in a position where they either need to make massive cuts and make some adjustments, or do what they're doing right now, where they just continue to print money and deficit spend, right? So then with that, okay, when you have shrinking demographies, it makes it for a climate for a higher cost of capital. So when you have each generation is bigger than the previous generation, so you got more people coming into the workforce, you got more people producing, more people consuming. In each generation, you have adding more and more people. So let's just say if your demographics, it's like a pyramid where you got more 0 to 5 year olds, more right, like you got, again, each generation is bigger and outgrowing the previous generation. So more and more people having kids. Okay, you can get away with a very low interest rate climate because, again, you got more people producing, more people consuming. Now we flip that, like that healthy demographic pyramid, flip it upside down on its head. Right, where you got more older people than you do younger people. It's the inverse of this now. Human beings for the first time, actually, at least in modern day recorded history, qualify for the endangered species list. And this isn't just a national problem, this is a global problem. So when we go back to Fannie Mae's 3 points there of, okay, to get back to affordability, because what we're experiencing right now is a massive affordability crisis. Why is about half of the people that used to be able to buy and sell real estate not able to buy and sell real estate? Because of this affordability crisis. And it's not just because of real estate, it's because of everything. Like, dude, taking your family out to fast food now costs as much as it used to go out to a nice meal. Everything has gotten so damn expensive. You remove real estate from it, just life is so insanely expensive. It's the most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen in recorded history. If you look at Gen Z in their 20s today, they have the same purchase power that a boomer did, or 90, sorry, Gen Z in their 20s has 90% less purchase power than a boomer did in their 20s. So we're in this massive unaffordability crisis. So how do we get back to affordability times? Again, wages need to go up 60% with zero inflation, right? So again, probably that taking place with things I just shared with you with, AI, technology, automation, all of this stuff, probably very, very low. Okay, rates coming down to 2.83% or 2.85%. Again, very low unless there's massive, insane intervention. And I don't know, unless money just doesn't exist and there actually are no such thing as debts. Maybe it exists to me and you because we're peasants, but to the powers that be, unless it's just an illusion, I don't know how they can just keep printing infinite amounts of money, without causing hyperinflation where, now we're having to pay $1 million for a loaf of bread, which we've seen that crap take place in other countries and the demise of other countries, in history, or prices need to come down, and not just prices on real estate, but prices on everything. We probably need some element of a deflationary depression, to take place, to get affordability back. Because you have two ways of looking at this. You could look at this as, everything appreciated so high, or I can think of this as my dollar's just lost that much purchasing power, right? So it's okay, prices are up, or is it that your dollar's so weak? I mean, it's both the same thing, but it's just our dollar has gotten so diluted. It's so weak right now. We have like almost zero purchase power with each dollar that we make. And each year that is getting more and more eroded, probably by about 10% every single year right now, unless things change. Okay. So then from there, on top of that, right, you got, okay, these are just what ifs. I don't know how this would impact, but okay, like what if we lead into, World War III? There's a lot of, smart minds out there that think that we're already there. A lot of times they don't call these things or say that we're in these things until well after those things took place, right, of like when these started, right? They might come back and say, hey, when the Russia and Ukraine conflict started, that was the beginning of World War III. Yeah, right. I mean, there's 40 some wars taking place globally right now. There's all these wars taking place everywhere, all throughout the globe right now. So I don't know. World War III takes place. I don't know what that looks like and what impact that has. Locally here, so meaning nationally, a civil war. Probably as close to a civil war as we have been in at least my lifetime in a long time. And civil war is just not all about politics, but when you get to a point where the gap between, Ray Dalio talks about this a lot and warns about this a lot, but when you have the gap between the haves and the have-nots be this wide, like typically this is the stuff that leads to civil wars in countries. Okay, how does that impact what we're doing in real estate and whatever else? Deglobalization. We're experiencing deglobalization for the first time in any of our lifetimes. The whole agreement was, after World War II, the United States would become the world reserve currency. We'd also then leverage our Navy, because we had the strongest Navy in the world. We would then leverage our Navy to be the global police. So everybody for the first time, at least in modern history, could partake in free and safe, or close to free and safe trade. So we could all industrialize, all get rich together. But the agreement was, okay, we're going to do this, but all of you are going to help become, ally with us against the Soviet Union for the Cold War to defeat the Soviet Union. And okay, well, that's been gone for like what, over for what, 30, 40 years. So deglobalization has been taking place for a long time, right? So we're pulling away from that. We're no longer in that same position of being, the global Navy, global police, where everybody can partake in the same free global trade. So the whole world order is shifting now with ally partners, and again, we'll see how that shakes down. I don't know what this is going to look like. It's never happened before here for me and you, so we'll see what that looks like. Then okay, if you look at the global debt, it's like an impossibility for it to be paid back. So I don't know, what do they have to do? They have to do some type of a financial reset. Who knows? But if you look at where we're at on a global front, not just the United States front, but a global front, like the amount of debt that we're in globally, like it's a mathematical impossibility to go out there and pay it back. So, like I said earlier, there's so many things taking place that we just hadn't experienced all simultaneously at the same time. We're kind of in a mess that we haven't seen before. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if anybody knows what the solution is. I just know that probably of things getting much uglier before they get worse is very, very high. But as I said earlier, this is not lose sleep at night. It's just going to be what it's going to be. It's out of my your control. What can we control? Our own actions, our own focus, what we pay attention to, and there's a massive opportunities at hand right now. There's going to continue to be massive opportunities, but there's several things that you got to make sure that you do inside your real estate business. So now I want to position into, okay, what do you do? Right? What do you do to go out there and create success? What do you do to ensure that your real estate business thrives? It doesn't just survive, but thrives during whatever we're going to go into. And again, hopefully everything I just shared here ends up being a nothing burger. Hopefully, well, when I say that, like, dude, I want it all to be worth some. So I do, would like to see as much as it's going to suck and painful it's going to be for a lot of people, but I think a crash is necessary. I think a massively deflationary something is necessary, just so we can get back to having high quality of life for the average Americans out there again, or a much higher quality of life than we're experiencing right now. But again, what I want is irrelevant because it's out of my control. But what I can control is my own business, my own. I may not be able to change the world, but you can, I could change my world. You may not be able to change the world, but you can change your world. So what is it that we need to focus on? So the first thing is the mental philosophy of, hey, there is no such thing as a good market or a bad market. The market's always good for somebody. It is your job as a real estate professional at the highest level to identify whom the market is good for, pivot, shift, adapt accordingly with your marketing, with your prospecting, with your energy, with your efforts to whom the market is good for. And when I say whom the market is good for, what I mean by that is where's the opportunity at? Who's buying? Who's selling? Why are they buying? Why are they selling? What are they selling? What are they buying? Like, you got to be able to identify where those opportunities are at, right? Because there's always massive opportunities out there. Then one of my mentors told me early on in my career was like, hey, Josh, if you get really good at acquiring and servicing traditional buyers and sellers, then you get really good at acquiring and servicing investors. Then you get really good at acquiring and servicing distress. So by distress, you got 30-day plus lates, pre-foreclosure, short sales, you got bank owns, but then you got also people in tough distress situations, right? Divorces, probates, we're in their tough situation, right? So it's like one of those is always going to be strong no matter what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the markets. One of those is always going to be strong. So if you get really good at servicing those, then and you have those three different legs to your business, one of those again is always going to be strong. But then you follow that up with, then you got to get good at paying attention to the market and knowing which one to shift to and pay attention to and adapt to, pivot to accordingly. So this is where I said earlier, like, you got to pay attention to the market. You got to look at who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why are they selling, meet with your title company reps, meet with your vendor reps. They typically are going to see a lot more volume than you see. And again, see who's acquiring the real estate, who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, where they're coming from, where they're going. I'm always paying attention to these things so I know where that next move is for me to pivot. Those that real estate businesses, get themselves in trouble, or those that just stay stagnant. Right? They don't adapt and pivot. They don't shift with the changes. They just keep doing the same crap that they've been doing. Right? But then when the market shifts and changes, then boom, they get blindsided and they get ran over. You don't want to allow that to be you when it comes to this. All right. So that's the first thing. And that's just kind of like high level things to be paying attention to. Then from there, right now, you got to be playing strategic offense. So what do I mean by strategic offense? This is twofold. You got strategic, then you got offense. So by strategic, I mean, you got to be laser focused, operating like a sniper with a sniper scope, identifying who, again, this is where I said just a moment ago about who has the highest probability of needing your services right now in this market. We don't want to shotgun things out. When you got 50% lesser people that are able to or willing to partake in this marketplace, and that's probably not going to change anytime for some time to come until affordability, comes back. Right. Or maybe we're just here indefinitely. I don't know. Right. If we can't get this fixed, if this doesn't shake out, if they keep manipulating things, and like who knows how this is going to shake out. But at least where we're at right now, where we'll probably be for some years in this unaffordability stage that we're in, we need to be laser focused on who needs your services. It's not about wants, it's about needs. I get so many real estate agents that will reach out to me like, man, I'm doing all this lead gen, lead follow up, Josh, but everybody's on the fence. Nobody wants to jump in, just too many people on the fence. I'm going, you're targeting the wrong people, right? Like you got to identify people that are in a situation change where they need your, not want your services, not want, there's an abundance of people that want to buy and sell. What I want to be targeting is those that need to buy and sell. So examples of these, first 18 years of my career, never focused on people going through divorce as a niche. I'm not saying it wasn't a good niche those first 18 years. It just wasn't a niche that I ever pursued. I was having so much success through, expireds and FISBOs and open houses and, Google pay-per-click and Facebook and working with our investor partners and I had other niches that I was focusing on. Well, then about 2 years ago, seeing that, okay, we're in the most unaffordable time that we've ever been as a country to exist as a human being. Number one reason for divorce, financial hardship. So then I was like, hey, man, I wonder if divorces are going up then. Right. So did my due diligence on that. Then boom, they indeed are and continue to go on the rise. So then from there, I'm like, okay, well, my hypothesis was, okay, this will be a great niche to go after, because this is a situation change where the probability of them needing and wanting to sell, as they go through this new life situation change is probably very high. So we started, testing the strategy out, and then boom, it just started taking off and being very fruitful for us. So it wasn't something I went out for my first 18 years, but now that we pivoted and changed into the most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen, it now was something that I pivoted and changed into. I saw the opportunity at hand. Like I said, look, identify who the market's good for, shift and adapt and change. I talked earlier about probates. That's a market that we're going after very heavily again. Not again, but you're going after heavily, because I see this as being the biggest listing wave opportunity that we will probably ever see for the rest of our careers. So looking at this, right? And then in my market, this is not a good niche for everybody in all markets, but, absentee owners, essentially investors, right? So in my market, we got rents coming down, we got prices coming down, we got tenant evictions increasing, but then we got hold costs going up. So you got taxes going up, insurance going up, HOAs going up, cost of maintenance going up. So, okay, like their cash flow and revenues going down and headaches are going down, expenses are going up. So a couple of years ago, we identified that, hey, look, I think this is a good niche to start targeting, going after. For the previous decade, from 2012 to 2022, we're helping investors just acquire tons and tons of real estate. Then, okay, the market shifted, the market changed. So then we're like, okay, well, this might be a great opportunity. We just hit the peak. If they want to sell at or close to peak pricing before the situation gets ugly, now is probably the opportunity time to do so. So we, pivoted our strategy going after investors for different reasons, right? And having big success with going after those. So it's like absentee owners, probates, divorces, expireds, FISBOs, there's all these different niches, and your market might be slightly different. But what I can tell you is that there's always going to be people buying and selling. People are always transacting in real estate. You need to identify who is buying and acquiring real estate in your marketplace. Going after buyers. Started going after, okay, all of our reload buyers that are moving from places where our market's a win from, because locals are like, hey, this house that's now worth, 650, 5 years ago was worth 300, and their incomes haven't went up, right? They're priced out of the marketplace. It's no longer a win for them. It's like ludicrous, right? And even for me being a local out here, I see the prices today. I'm like, who the hell would pay that? That's ridiculous. But then we started targeting people that, in different situations, like San Francisco Bay Area, right? That are looking to relocate out of there, relocate to our market. They're coming from a 100-year-old house. It's a 1,300 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath house, that they're able to sell for, I don't know, 1.5, 2 million in some cases, able to come down here, buy what feels to be like a mansion to them, gated community, brand new, beautiful, property for like 800 grand. And they're like, I can't believe this is a possibility. For them, that's a massive win. Right? They're downsizing financially, but they're way upsizing on quality of life. So then for them, it's a win. So we got started looking at, okay, what are all the top metros that are moving to our area? What are those metros where, man, people are just ecstatic. They cannot believe the deals that they're getting in our marketplace, because locals don't feel like they're getting the same deals anymore. So again, making sure that you're pivoting those. So when I talk about strategic, I mean being laser focused like a sniper scope on whom you're targeting. By offense, I mean you're not waiting for anything to come to you. So I'm talking about, like, a perfect example of this. When I talk about probates or divorces, a lot of people will ask me, a lot of realtors will ask me, what does that mean that you reach out to and get relationships with attorneys? Okay, if you want to, sure. I'm not, right? Like, that'd be a secondary side hustle. That's me waiting for them to spoon feed me business. Right now, I'm not waiting for anything to come to me. I'm going after it. Right. So I'm playing strategic offense. I'm being very, very specific on whom I'm targeting, whom I'm going after. So I'm being very niche down. Offense means I'm doing things where my business is in my full control, so I'm getting the data and I'm reaching out to them directly. So first thing that you can do when it comes to a tactical standpoint is strategic offense. This next thing is you got to treat your business as a business. He or she that's the best operator wins. You can no longer wing it. We're in a time of war right now. This war may be indefinite. I don't know. You got times of peace, times of war in business and life. So I'm not talking that we're in a hot war. Yeah, right. Out shooting, fighting an actual battle. But there's battle in business, man. And we just 2012 through 2022, longest bull market recorded history, longest real estate expansion recorded history, longest economic expansion recorded, in recorded history. That was peace. That was 10 years of peace. You could kind of work, kind of show up. You could have low level skill set and make great money. Those days that's done. That's over. Now you need to have the right skills. Yeah, right. Like you got to go out there, you got to work your butt off. You got to treat your business as a business. And when I say treat your business as a business, that means okay, we've got a strategy plan with precision where you know what you got to do to win every single day, every single week. Here's what you must do to go out there and win to achieve your goals. Then from there, you got to acquire the right skill sets that are necessary for you to maximize your strategy plan. The skill sets that you learn for cold calling are different than for online leads, different from open houses, different from creating YouTube, content or TikTok or, whatever. Like each thing might have a different set of skills that you need to learn to go out there and maximize your success of that thing. So once I identify, okay, here's my strategy plan with precision. Now I'm going to make a list of what are the skills that I must dial in, hone in, and master to maximize my success with this thing. Then from there, you hone in your processes, hone in your systems, right? You're tracking each element of your business. This is what I mean by treating your business as a business. You need to know every single day what you need to do to win, and you're doing everything you can to maximize your success on those things to go out there and win. And then the last component here is just working your ass off, right? Like right now, we're just experiencing it's the haves and the have-nots. A mentor of mine years and years and years ago, this is maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. Yeah, right. He told me, he's like, man, he goes, we're going to start seeing the elimination of the middle class. He's like, the middle class was born through the Industrial Revolution, didn't really exist before, right? It was born during the Industrial Revolution because it was necessary. But he's like, hey, now we're going through the deindustrialization of the globe. And, as tech and AI come about, he goes, there will be no need for middle class. So there's going to be no middle. There's going to be the haves and the have-nots, and I understood what he was saying. It was maybe being naive. Maybe I didn't want to hear it, right? I just didn't think we were going to see it so fast, but we're seeing it before our eyes, right? So we're seeing, and like in the real estate industry, I'm either seeing agents, or teams or brokers have like the best year of their career or the worst. Like there's no middle ground, right? And this is what we're seeing just across the country. Again, the middle class getting wiped out. And I hope to God that isn't going to take place or something intervenes or whatever. I don't want to see that, but it's what we're seeing right now. So you got to make that decision of what part of the equation do I want to be on, the haves or the have-nots? Right? Do I want to have the money or do I want to be broke and struggle for the rest of my life? Right? This is not a time for balance. This is not a time. I'm not saying to neglect your family, neglect your health. Yeah, right. But I am saying that, hey, you might need to get back to working 6, 7 days a week, working 8, 10, hours. They have fully focused, fully intentional time, may take you less travel, whatever, to set you and your family up and get through and navigate through these times. There's just different seasons that exist to this stuff. I've had seasons where I don't have to work a lot in my business. Yeah, right. I'm able to enjoy more time with the family and enjoy more time off. But I've had seasons where, man, I got to go out there and put the pedal to the metal and go out there and grind. This is a grind season. So to kind of recap these, right? Don't play a victim. Don't blame the market for your lack of success because the market has nothing to do with it. When we play a victim, we give up our power to something that's outside of our control. So that example, this would be, oh man, my business is down because of interest rates. No, your business is down because you're choosing to not do the right work. Choosing to not focus on the right. That has nothing to do with interest rates. You got to take responsibility of that. Like, it's like, dude, like life is not fair. You are entitled to nothing. Nobody's coming to save you. You need to understand those 3 components, right? So then it's like, okay, it's not the market. The market's going to do what the market's going to do. You're going to have, it's out of our control. Here's what my goals are. What must I do to accomplish my goals regardless? Because like I said earlier, it's, that no such thing as a good market, no such thing as a bad market. The market's always good for somebody. It's our job as real estate professionals to identify whom the market is good for. So we got to make sure we've got our mental philosophy and our mindset honed in, dialed in, focused on the right things. Then number 2, we're playing strategic offense. Number three, treating our business as a business. Number four, working your ass off. And you do these things, I promise you, you won't just survive this, but you'll thrive. You'll go out there and continue to grow and scale. There's massive opportunities out there. There's people crushing it, kicking butt, having the best year of their careers right now. Why not you? So if you make the right moves, there's massive opportunities out there for you to be had. So I hope that this is helpful. Again, if you are interested in learning more about partnering with me at EXP, where you get 100% full free access to all my coaching, all my training, all my mentorship, along with my business partner, Mike Sherrard, who's the best in the world at AI, social media, and YouTube in the real estate space. So you get 2 for 1. You get full both of all of our coaching, training, mentorship for you, for your agents, 100% for free. Where we can work together and help ensure that you are crushing your real estate goals. If that's something that you're interested in learning more about, there's going to be a link below in the show notes or the description where you can schedule 100% confidential, 100% zero pressure. When I say zero pressure, not going to be recruited, not going to try to push you, not going to pressure you. It's just, hey, here's what we got going on. Here's the opportunity at hand. Here's everything that we have going on, all the support, additional coaching, training systems, all the wealth building opportunities that we have that may not exist in your current opportunity that you're in. A lot of times we got to, it's a lot of our success is making sure that we're in the right boat. I don't care how hard you're rowing. If you're in the wrong boat, if you're in the wrong vehicle, you're not going to create that success. I'm just going to walk through, hey, here's what this vehicle looks like. Answer any questions that you have. You think it's the right vehicle for you, great. If not, that's okay too. We could still be friends. You have my word on that. All right, guys, keep crushing it, keep kicking ass, and I will talk to you next time. Peace.